Welcome to South Africa 2020 Lockdown, the sequel that nobody asked for.
Well, I am Whiskey Wotan along with the Conscious Caracal, and this is actually our second attempt because, as it turns out, the internet connectivity in our country is pretty unstable. I'm just going to adjust my volume down just a wee bit.
Yeah, dude, no, thanks for having me on. Like I said in the previous false start, I think the No Script Show fans are in for a treat here to give a little bit of a counterweight to the cabin fever blues or the lockdown blues. I think a lot of new episodes of the No Script Show are going to come out in this time, seeing as Wotan now has a lot of time to really start churning out some quality content. And I will definitely help out if I have some ideas or have some time to contribute. And like I told Odin, he knows that I'm pretty much open for any type of discussion, seeing as I don't have a lot of else to do after I've done my work from home.
Quote unquote quality. All five of our fans. No, we're playing. We appreciate it. No, I'm actually surprised every time somebody messages me on the Discord server or tweets me or fucking DMs me. So actually, while I'm at it, if we can, just for 5 seconds, shout out to Jacques out in Australia. Shout out to J. Andrew. I think he's out somewhere in Central Africa. Shout out to Glassman out in the US. Shout out to Gary out in the UAE. Shout out to Belleville Pete. And shout out to the rest of y'all on the server. And of course, our boy Martin Maniac. On the Discord server, and the rest of y'all.
Odin Moija, Mr. Worldwide.
Mr. Worldwide, like Corona, Mr. Worldwide. Yeah,
dude, so who's our sponsor for today?
Well, have you ever thought, you know what, I concealed carry my weapon, but I'd like to go into a restaurant. I'm not an insane person. I simply want to protect myself and my loved ones. I'm not a crazy person because, as it turns out, if the majority of people on planet Earth who own guns were crazy people, we'd have a lot more shootings. Well, have you ever thought, what if I could go eat at a place in Pretoria, if I live in Pretoria, that welcomed firearms owners who responsibly conceal carry? What if I go eat and have great brandy at a place that somebody like Conscious Caracal, Whiskey Wotan, Germ, or even Ernst Ritz would eat at? Well, that place exists. It's Buffelsfontein, and it's in the east of Pretoria, not far from Capital Craft Mainland, and it is the restaurant for you. Honestly, give it a try. It's fantastic. You'll love their brandy, you'll love their food prices, you'll love the people there. Give it a shot.
Yeah, man, and that aroma of jacarandas in the air definitely doesn't hurt the cause in any way.
Of course not. No.
Yeah, man, but talking about food, I think, firstly, I think in this whole lockdown situation, a lot of parents are going to realize that the teacher was not the problem. And then secondly, I think a lot of people are going to realize their cooking skills are definitely lacking. And I think the one of the things that I'm glad about is that in the when I started at university and now I'm done, is that the big skill that I picked up very early on was cooking. And it's not like fucking amazing things that you can make. Like, I'm not a 5-star chef, but I can make some pretty nutritious meals that taste good at the same time, and also importantly are cheap, that you can afford at any type of salary level. So yeah, and it's not about having, for example, a mastery of cookery. You just need to be able to make food that you enjoy and food that fits into your budget and that gives you all your basic needs and nutrition. And I think that's very possible for any person that applies themselves. And maybe it's easier said than done because I'm not that picky with food. I can actually I like the things that I make myself, even if it's something as basic as sardines on toast. But I mean, there's a lot of nice canned meat and canned fish out there, like you and I discussed earlier last week, that a lot of people that don't want to go through the hustle of cooking can actually use, that still makes a pretty nutritious and cheap and delicious meal. But when I'm talking about the type of meals that I've talked about start in the first place are more like you can make a pretty mean pasta, or like just cook something up like a chicken piece of chicken that you season very well with basic stuff, and some chips maybe on the side. I mean, you can do some pretty nice things with very basic ingredients that anyone can master.
Yeah, well, this ties into. I still remember living in places like Attridgeville. So, a tin of bully beef or bull brand or whatever the hell you call it. You know what it is, South Africa. That rectangle little beef, corned beef tin can, little cow on it. Like, you know what it is.
That'll be next week's sponsor.
Yeah, next week's sponsor. That can go surprisingly far if you stretch it. At the end of the day, it kind of, like you said, it's no secret. You and I posted this on social media. We had our sort of final luxury braai,
pre-lockdown braai.
Yeah, we sipped on some drinks. We had a, what was it? I think it was my Glen V12 or whatever, yes. And that isn't the fanciest whiskey on the
Japanese
planet.
Whiskey, what was it that we had?
Akashi Red.
Yes.
I still have an extra bottle of it. I actually got into a bit of it earlier today, but that's besides the point. We sipped on those things, and it was nice, but it was sort of in memory of the luxury we're going to be sacrificing over the next couple of days.
Right.
And that's the thing, I feel, or I know actually, I've gone to bed, don't let my private school black accent fool you guys. I know what it feels like to go to bed hungry simply because there's literally nothing to eat. Okay, my family worked damn hard. And the thing about this whole lockdown that I feel like was one of the overarching themes of our conversation on that last braai is, people forget that between things like Uber Eats and all this stuff and going out every so often and just having the luxury of not having to have
to eat that you can instantly access just by giving them money.
Exactly. Or not having to store tin food in your cupboard.
Yes.
Tons of fresh food. Guys, I hate to break this to you, but that's the luxury of life. Even if you're lower middle class, lower to actual mid class, you're probably living a better life than some of the wealthiest kings that have ever lived in humanity. You're living a better life right now, even though you don't quite have the same amount of social sort of capital and influence than John D. Rockefeller. Right now, I'm living a better life than John D. Rockefeller.
And also keep in mind that the Black Plague, or the coronavirus, has nothing on the Black Plague, man.
Oh yeah. We didn't have germ theory. We didn't have the internet yes, we have airlines to spread the disease, but we also have the internet to spread shit. I live a better life than John D. Rockefeller right now. I honestly wouldn't swap places with him. Honestly, I wouldn't, because he didn't have the internet, he didn't have video games. My car is orders of magnitude beyond anything he could imagine.
If you show your car to someone in the early 1900s, it would literally be magic to them.
Exactly, and for reference, guys, I drive a Mercedes A-Class. Fine, but it's still orders of magnitude better than what John D. Rockefeller or any of his engineers could have imagined.
Right. Yeah, man. And I think that's the other thing that a lot of people will realize, is that small things that used to be something that everyone could do, like gardening and cooking and keeping their house in order and stuff like that the modern human doesn't have to do anymore, are suddenly now important again. So the people today that still have those skills are going to have the last laugh, I reckon. Because I think a lot of people today, like I said during the previous recording, couldn't even boil water without burning it. So I think, hopefully, on the other side, two positive things that I can think of off the top of my head can come out on the other side of this pandemic, or on this lockdown, rather. Firstly, people can learn to cook basic things, and, three things, actually. Firstly, learn to cook basic things. Secondly, learn how to do a very, very rudimentary, primitive budget. And thirdly, and this is the most important thing, not the most important, but very important, I hope people retain their healthy, clean hygiene habits that they've picked up now, like basic things like washing your hands. Like, it seems like so many people, it's revolutionary to them. They're like, what? I have to wash my hands?
I mean,
what?
okay. I'll take a very Whiskey Wotan sort of tack on this. One of the hottest tips I always give, and I'm not saying, guys, that at this particular moment I'm drowning in women. I may or may not have one or two women in my place right now living with me for the next 21 days. But I will tell you this, one of the top tips...
Wait, before you continue, just let's put it this way. You're not drowning, you're keeping your head above water.
Yes. I mean, I may or may not have some women in my DMs. That's none of your business. But what I will tell you is, like, in terms of hygiene, like, one of the hottest tips I would ever tell guys, as I learned, and I wish I could tell a much younger version of myself, simple things. When you're going out, you're selling yourself to a girl. I know, it sounds weird, but you're selling yourself to a girl. And girls notice little things, like A, your chapped ass lips, or B, your dirty ass fingernails. No girl wants to get dug out by a dude that's got fingernails like he's a crossbreed between Freddy Krueger, Edward Scissorhands, and fucking Garbage Monster from Sesame Street. No girl wants that, because as it turns out, the human vagina is a fucking breeding ground for germs. Keep your hands clean and your nails short. Basic shit like that for your own health and theirs. It even helps you get girls, guys. So just fucking keep your hands clean.
Yeah, man. But speaking of lockdowns now, I see it's a bit of a segue back to I think the main theme, what will eventually be the main theme of this episode. A lot of people made the point that, the Chinese numbers at the moment are very suspicious. They went from 2,000 a day, 3,000 a day, reporting 5,000 a day, up to 15,000 a day, and then the next day, 0 today, everything is fine, don't worry guys, no problem. I'm like, excuse my raised eyebrow, if you will.
Well, I mean, Jimmy Ramahopa just posted that, and I was like, and Ronaldo replied to it and said, if you believe that, you deserve to be called an idiot. Shout out to Ronaldo hosts, and shout out to everyone else. And I replied to it, and I said, listen, fam, I said something to the effect of, listen, fam, if you believe that, then, there's a bridge in... rather, Ruan, by my alter sort of ego / rival, said, there's a bridge in Brooklyn I can sell you, sort of thing. And I said, if you believe the Chinese numbers, then there's a lot of hot singles in the area that I could introduce you to. Yeah. And he said, what Ruan actually said, I just pulled up the tweet. What he actually said was, do you still have that bridge in Brooklyn you can sell me? And that's a reference to an old sort of Ponzi hustler scheme, which is, it was a sort of scheme where hustlers said they could sell you the Brooklyn Bridge. The Brooklyn Bridge is a bridge between Brooklyn and, I believe, Manhattan. I'm not going to pull up the page, just not to cheat, which if you own that...
Just a very quick interlude, Odin. I'm just going to refill my drink. You continue the story, but just a heads up if I'm silent and not responding to your message.
No worries. I can monologue this for a bit. So the Brooklyn Bridge is a bridge between Brooklyn and, I believe, Manhattan, which is, if you could own that bridge, if you even charged a single cent to every car that crossed that bridge, either way, per day, 1 cent, you would be so wealthy, it'd be unbelievable. So that's the whole meme behind that. So basically, I said to Jimmy, so if you believe the Chinese numbers, there's hot singles in the area that would love to meet you. My rival, which, again, I have begrudging respect for, shout out to the man Goose, Ron Hussein, he said, you still got that bridge in Brooklyn to sell? And then, that was just like a perfect sort of side swipe punch. And then I replied to Ruan, Yeah, I will introduce you to my Nigerian prince sort of backer to help you out with financing for that. And the whole point of this entire banter was, guys, we're trying to get you to believe that if you genuinely believe the CCP, an actual authoritarian, sort of horrific government that would kidnap and murder journalists, and doctors to cover up the actual numbers, to sort of cover up what's actually happening there. If you believe that, if you believe the CCP, then
Stop
you'll
simping,
believe
dude.
anything. Huh?
Stop simping.
Yeah, stop simping. Which brings us into our next topic, which is actual simping in general. But let's start from a general level. Simping.
Don't ambush me like that with like the most philosophical question of our time, man. Give me a few seconds to digest it. That's our next topic.
I'm deep into this bottle of Buffelsfontein.
Maybe before we get there, just a quick thing that I just thought of. A lot of people say that the Chinese numbers cannot be trusted because there was information about like 20 million people whose cell phone contracts were cancelled or something like that. Did you hear that as well?
I did, yes.
But then I had this thought, and this is a kind of counter-narrative. I'm being like, I'm kind of being devil's advocate. What if those 20 million people, or those 20 million cell phone contracts that were taken offline are not people that died, but people that were censored?
Sure, but some of them must have died.
I was just thinking about how they completely have complete control over their intranet and their cell phones network. So probably if people were sharing information about the virus, they would just be cut off, right?
I assume so, but also, like, do you really believe none of those people that they
Oh, no, of course not. I don't believe the Chinese numbers for a second. I was just thinking out of curiosity.
That's a good point.
Like, how many of those cell phones that were taken offline weren't just people that were taken offline by the authoritarian regime?
It's a good point. By the way, guys, if you've ever wondered what it's like to sit on my fake grass balcony stoop thing and hang out with myself in conscious caracal, this discussion is precisely what it normally sounds like.
Yeah, man, just being broadcast to an audience. But yeah, you were saying, lay the foundation for the simp discussion.
Okay, well, let's start with the discussion of the word simp itself, because it's sort of risen to prominence. And I feel like it deserves a good definition. And Urban Dictionary's kind of given it a good definition. And its definition is basically just any guy that it's like White Knight on steroids. It's that guy that was your girlfriend's best friend.
White Paladin.
Yeah, like Paladin. And the minute you left town, he was in her ear like, oh, by the way, he liked this girl's fucking Instagram picture.
I'll treat you right.
I'll treat you right. He liked this girl's Instagram. He's that bitch ass nigga that would just be her best friend because he didn't have the nuts to actually be her boyfriend, and she knew that as well. Just by the way, simps, girls can pick up on your lack of testicular fortitude, and you'll never get in there. And he's I'll treat you right and all that. So simp is that like, oh, anything for you, you're always right, like that kind of guy.
In a Pokemon sense, it's the next evolved version of like the nice guy.
Basically, yeah.
It's like the Blastoise to the what's the
it's Squirtle, Wartortle, and then Blastoise.
Yeah, it's basically the Blastoise to the Squirtle.
Yeah.
In terms of the nice guy. The nice guy is Squirtle.
And then it's Wartortle, like the
White Knight.
And then
there's
Blastoise is Simp. Full on simp, okay? And a hell of a lot of you have been simping for the China. I've sat in multiple WhatsApp groups with my friends and all that, and I'm, by comparison, probably the most right-wing person in that group. And they're just sitting there like, yeah, but the racist name is going to attract violence towards Asians and all that shit. And And let me put this out here, just straight up, and I will say this: if you're using this virus or whatever to propagate race, I called this out. I called up some chick in Australia. By the way, Australians super racist towards Asians. And I said,
well, they're right next door, so you'd expect it, man. Like,
yeah, super racist towards Asians, and also super racist towards Aborigines. It was still legal to hunt them till like 19 whatever, like when my mom was born.
That's
like,
what I find That's what I find so funny about the history of all these types of things. Is that
y'all ripping Afrikaners. Australians were literally hunting black people in their continent.
And that's not even to talk about how the Americans went about their native issue, rather, as they framed it.
Also, there's my ultimate point about Afrikaners, which is, where the fuck do you think the colored race came from? There was a lot of midnight barn rendezvous with Saki and her crew, with Johanna and Saki in there. Like, trust me, okay, they're really not that racist. But anyway,
it's almost like, if you can use the metaphor of when you were out drinking with your mates, and then one of your mates you all fucked up, you all did something terrible that night, but one mate truly fucks up, and then everyone else points to him, and it kind of takes away the blame from them. And I see that's what, like, America and England and Australia did. It's like, oh, but look what South Africa did. They're the real evil guys. Let's never do that again. But then you kind of deflect blame from yourself. And probably some of the things you've done were much more, in the genuine sense, absolutely abhorrently evil. And we're not talking about that because you write the history books. But anyway,
exactly.
I think we started talking about simps, and now we're talking about...
Yeah, let's go back to simps. Okay, so my biggest issue, and again, I'm on so many WhatsApp groups, both left and right.
Maybe just a trivial fact: simp has been around a long while as a term. It actually comes from simpleton.
Yes, which tells you their mental faculties. So I'm on a lot of WhatsApp groups, both left and right wing. And the right wing ones have their issues for me, but I'll go in on the left because, first of all, because I'm a libertarian and, the left have control of the media right now. I just had a huge argument on one of my friends' WhatsApp groups. I spoke to you about it. Like, honestly, like, the people... Can you tell me, honestly, any of you in the range of my voice, how many of you people thought Donald Trump was a racist in 2014? How many of you people hated him in 2014? Because that's the narrative, right? The narrative to the media is he has this long thing of racism and like sexism and all that. Never mind that he hired the first female architect for a skyscraper in New York. Never mind he was one of the first to let Jews and black people on his golf courses when he had nothing. But I assume
mind him taking pictures with people like Al Sharpton
and Don King. But I assume all of this was because he had like super future vision and could see 20 years in the fucking future. And
so let me get this straight. The leftists are actually arguing that Donald Trump is playing 4D chess. Am I right?
Yeah, basically.
Or he's just not a racist. Maybe the Occam's razor is the right answer.
Exactly. And for those of you who don't understand what Occam's razor is, it's I believe it was from criminal investigation, but I actually learned it in computer science, which is the assumption that, the solution that requires the least amount of assumptions is generally the most favored or the most correct. It's especially applied to computer forensics when you're trying to track down a hacker or anything like that. That's what we were taught.
And that's the point that I've made so many times when we were talking is like, the big indicator for me of Donald Trump not being a racist is just look at the absolute Mount Everest amount of rap songs where he is referenced in a positive light.
Right, up until even 2014, 2015 even, the amount of rap songs like Donald Trump, Ray Schmurd. I'm deeply upset that he didn't choose that as his coronation song. I would have loved if he went onto the stage, Up Like Donald Trump, Ray Schmurd, just
in some alternate universe, yes.
Oh, that'd be amazing.
But yeah, man, and that's the thing, is that we've just seen this shift. And I mean, you have politicians like Hillary Clinton that talk in front of a black audience where she says, "I carry hot sauce in my in my handbag all the time," and in another instance, calling like young black men super predators.
Well, I love that you brought that up. That carry hot sauce in my handbag all the time, because the thing is, for me, that kind of ties into the sort of what I call low expectations racism. It's kind of like
it's
when
the soft bigotry of lowered expectations.
Exactly, like when people who speak, I've seen this a couple of times, people who I know speak, like myself, perfectly good English, even though I'm not a white man, perfectly good English, and then the minute they meet a black person or a non-white person, they start speaking broken English on purpose. And I'm like, this is so incredibly fucking racist. They know what you're saying. Stop fucking speaking like this. And I've spoken to them, and like, we can tell, like, we know what you're saying. Don't do this bullshit. Like just because we don't speak it back. And it's kind of like also ties into my thing where a lot of people expect that, and it comes down to English sort of first language versus second language translation, which again, I always admit that I have the immense luxury of having gone to a very, very expensive sort of boarding school, and hence I speak English so well. But you know, like, it's not just limited to black people, to Afrikaans people. I have a bunch of Afrikaans friends who are absolutely brilliant human beings. But if you had to hear them explain something in English versus explain something in Afrikaans, you think, this dude's an idiot, versus, oh, this dude's actually fucking brilliant.
Yeah, man. And then another thing that I wanted to talk about, actually it's something we talked about in person, but it links up so well with the coronavirus lockdown, but also of your field of expertise, is basically the role of artificial intelligence in pretty much in pandemics or times of pandemic, and maybe even specifically this pandemic. Is there the field of artificial intelligence where you have a lot of knowledge on, a lot of experience in, what can that field offer to humanity as almost like a benefit or some type of way out or some way of dealing with the virus or tracking the virus or modeling the virus or whatever?
Cool. So here's the thing. You're right. It has, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I actually didn't even think about it during this podcast. It has got me thinking. Okay, so here's the thing. The greatest strength of artificial intelligence is its ability to extrapolate on factors that we cannot see. So that is to say, okay, so a great example, and I've said this before multiple times, one of my absolute heroes in computer science and specifically artificial intelligence sat, and, you know, in a lecture she said to me, she asked the class, there must have been like 20, maybe 18 of us in that class, and she said, if a machine could tell you the first 100 digits of pi, would you say that it's smart? And we said no. Everybody in the class said no. If a person could tell you the first 100 digits of pi, would you say that they're a genius? And we said, absolutely, you're a mathematical savant. Like, cool. Now let's swap that round. Let's say if a person could tell you all the objects on the table and pick up one and say, I don't know what that object is, would you say that that person is super smart or super dumb? And we said, no, they're just a person. And if a machine could sort of lift one object on the table and say, I don't know what that object is, one object it doesn't know, would you say that machine is super smart? And we all said no. Yes, we'd say that machine is super smart. And that the whole concept of artificial intelligence is to bridge the gap between human intelligence and machine intelligence. Or rather, to say, why the fuck are machines so dumb? And
why are you so dumb, dog?
Yeah, and to your point, the ability of us is to sort of not crash when we don't know unknowns. We right. fall back on our basic programming. The ability of machines is to hold on to a bunch of factors that we mentally, physically cannot right now. Maybe we can with enough augmentations in the future, but we can't. So, moving to your point of artificial intelligence modeling things, I would love if there were some sort of open, maybe I haven't looked for it yet, and maybe there is already, open sort of coronavirus challenge to computer scientists. Because the thing about this is, even though I come, as you know, from my Ronaldo Host interview, from a family of doctors and lawyers, and all that, I don't understand the medical factors of it, but we understand things like infection vectors and things like that. And that can be modeled scientifically or mathematically, rather, in a computer science context. So I would love if there was a computer science. I don't know of any right now, and I haven't been looking, so maybe I'm wrong. But the value of computer science, or rather the value of artificial intelligence, is if you gave us all these infection vectors, we could mathematically build up a bunch of models that could actually, and I'm assuming some of the predictions are based on computer science. Some of the predictions that have been brought out by like the Center for Disease Control in America, have been based in computer science. But yeah, we have that ability to model out a bunch of factors that nobody saw or how it will spread. So yeah, right. Our value that we can add is a bunch of vectors that nobody saw before.
But now, and this is the question I asked you when we were chatting as well in person, when you now describe all these benefits that can be gained from talking to people that are knowledgeable in the field of artificial intelligence in terms of dealing with pandemics, why are we seeing so little interaction between policymakers and this field, or any type of outreach to this field in terms of how they can help or how they can pretty much contribute to humanity's fight against this virus? Is it because people just are ignorant, they don't understand this angle? Is it because people don't have prior exposure to the field, don't really know that it exists or how powerful it is? What's the case here? Why aren't people actually utilizing exactly what you're describing?
Okay, well, I would say that there's two sets of answers. I love how you're interviewing me again on our show, by the way. By the way, the show is now ruined myself in conscious caracal. But anyway,
I just think it's an excellent topic that matches the podcast's identity so well, because it is a tech question, but it's also relevant to the news.
Yeah. Okay, so I would say that there are two sets of answers. There's the official answer, and there's my personal opinion. The official answer is that the authorities just haven't asked us yet. My personal opinion is that as a computer science, as a sort of peer-reviewed sort of Google Scholar, like you can search by name on Google Scholar, you'll see the research stuff that I've done. As a computer scientist, big brain, galaxy brain, not like
Elon Musk small brain.
Not like a Simon Grindrod, like galaxy brain, like whatever. My personal answer is that that's actually redundant. English shit. Anyway, personal answer is that the people in charge of making decisions, in charge of giving funding, are slightly older, and this is not an anti-boomer thing. Not like okay, boomer girl. We'll get into that later. It's just that they lack the ability to understand how interconnected our planet is, and that is to say, they think sort of in a very siloed manner. Like this has to do with medicine. Okay. And no scientific discipline can model it other than medicine. And that worked in 1930 or in 1830. But now we live in an extremely connected world where computer science can model a lot of things other than itself. It's sort of like, Here's a good example. Let's think of the best way. Okay, Broken Telephone. That game we used to play as kids.
Yes.
Is a good model as to how much information gets dispersed. Mm-hmm. You think it's a child's game, but in computer science or in securities sort of theory, it's a good example of how much information gets lost along the way. And that's why sort of a lot of militaries, well, they learned from that, but they didn't learn a lot of things. That a lot of militaries sort of follow a compartmentalisation model, is that a lot of information gets lost along the way, and some information doesn't need to be heard by everyone. And that's why, let's say, if you're a 5-star general or a 3-star general in the US Air Force, you may not know the same information as a 3-star general in the US Marine Corps, because you don't need to know that don't need to know that information, but also, information gets lost along the way.
Take a sip of whiskey.
I know.
Gotta refuel.
Yeah. So that's my long-winded answer.
All right, and so concludes the tech segment of this episode. No, man, but I asked that question because I think it's very relevant to this time. And like I said, it matches. It's perfect for this podcast in terms of the tech side of it. And I just thought when I talked to you in person, your answer was very fascinating, and I would like to broadcast that to more people that might be interested.
Yeah, well, I mean, we need to discuss these things for the masses, as it were.
Our audience are the masses.
Our audience are the masses.
Yeah,
by the way, so have you watched a series called Tiger King on Netflix?
Tiny King?
Tiger King.
Tiger King, no.
Okay. I need you to watch it because basically the Tiger King is Donald Trump and Carol Baskin is Hillary Clinton, and that's all I'm going to say.
Okay. I'll definitely watch it, man.
Now, we'll do a marathon next time you're at my place.
Oh, dude, that would be awesome. Let's do that.
Yes. That in the 1917
1917, yes. Actually, I think that's a pretty nice point of conversation that we can get into. So recently I went to watch 1917 with one of my mates, and really excellently shot film. But one of the things that I realized during that watching of that film is how shitty the tech was during World War One.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will say this with regard to 1917. Well, and I'm going to have a bit of commentary on the whole First World War because I'm a massive First World War nerd. First of all, shout out to my boy Levi or Leviticus for sort of recommending me the Dan Carlin Hardcore History podcast on the First World War. The First World War is actually one of the richest historical, there's so much intrigue that led up to that shit. And there's so much human fucking tragedy that led. I mean, the experts of the experts of.
If you haven't picked up yet, I'm trying to piece together our conversation we had in person onto this episode because I thought it was so fascinating. I think it would be actually go to waste that conversation if we didn't have a few other people chipping in to listen. So that's where I'm steering it.
Exactly. That's why we're doing a high level sort of review of it now, and then later we'll at another episode we'll go into depth with it. But it's just such a human, absolute fucking tragedy. By the way, gang, there are places in France and other parts of Western Europe that are known as red zones. Do you think the Second World War was bad? There are red zones in Western Europe. Red zones are areas where there's still so many shells unexploded laid in the earth right now. There are still hundreds in the last 20 years of farmers in Western Europe that are just plowing along on their farms, and their plow sheets just hits a shell or something or a grenade in the earth, and it kills him because it landed in the earth and it just never detonated. So
it's hectic, man.
Yeah, so that war was pretty rich in history. But yes, sorry, your point originally.
No, my point originally was just it just dawned on me while I watched that film how basic the technology was, especially in terms of weaponry during that time. I mean, machine guns in the Second World War. In the Second World War, people were carrying around machine guns that they could fire from the hip. But in the First World War, a machine gun was like a specialized class.
Yeah, it was, and that was the dawn of our current. I mean, the Germans. There's a lot, and this is the thing. Dan Carlin in his Hardcore History podcast, and again, we're not going into deep of this. We're gonna go into the deep details at a later podcast. But Dan Carlin made a very poignant point about the German army in the First World War, because they actually didn't start that. It was the Austrians.
Throwing some shade.
Yeah, you can actually, he pointed out, you can actually admire the feats of valor of the German army in the First World War.
And then Adolf Hitler was also an Austrian.
Exactly. He was. But you can't admire the feats of valor of anyone, no matter how noble it was, of the German army in the Second World War, because it's overshadowed by the cause. And you can admire the sort of German army in the First World, and there were some absolutely insane feats of valor of the German army. In fact, the German army in 1916, I tend to agree with Dan Carlin, was one of the best armies, the top 5 best armies in the 20th century, the German army of 1916. And a good guy by the name of Erwin Rommel, the last gentleman knight of Germany, who's happened to...
Rommel.
Yeah, he cut his teeth in the First World War, and cut his teeth meaning he earned his stripes or whatever. And why is he a good guy? Is because one of his great plots was, one of his things was he was called the Gentleman Knight of Germany. If you were an Allied trooper, you prayed to God you got captured by one of Rommel's troops. If you were a Jew in the Second World War, you prayed to God you got captured by one of Rommel's troops, because he straight up told Hitler to go fuck himself when Hitler asked him to send Jewish troops to death camps.
And he had the authority to do that.
Because he was such a beloved figure in Germany and such an insanely effective general on the battlefield and warrior. So, the First World War was gruesome. We'll go into that at a sort of separate podcast, and if you want to listen to that, but on this one, not so much.
Maybe we should do it. Like I said, I'm open for a lot of podcast episodes during this lockdown. Maybe we should do a history-themed one, not even specifically World War One, just a history-themed one, where all the topics and all the segues are history.
I would love that, actually.
Yeah, man, we can, like I suggested, that we can get back to this. Like I suggested, at the beginning of the show.
And the bride gets to have a bride with us on my balcony. I'm just kidding, guys. I don't have such a big balcony. Honestly, I don't.
Yeah, man. But I suggested it to you in person. We can actually, it doesn't have to be officially titled that way. It can be titled like a regular No Scripture episode. But we can do some lockdown episodes where we genuinely get an episode where we start talking about a specific topic. Because what makes it interesting is, and I don't want to blow our own horn, but in terms of podcasts, during a time of isolation when a lot of people are sitting at home alone or not really exposed to their regular friend groups or social circles, you psychologically become hungry for conversation and for listening to conversation and not interacting, but being part of a conversation. And I do think you can fool your brain to a large extent with podcasts and YouTube and whatever, that your brain thinks it's not going to be completely fooled, but your brain will get to that point where I think you're interacting with enough people this week, I'll stay sane. So I think that's where we are now, is in a situation where people are going to appreciate these types of podcasts even more, especially these types of podcasts like we're having now, that is structured like a conversation rather than a more of a formalized version of it. So I think, and that's why I actually try to incorporate a lot of the topics that you and me talked about in private, person to person, because I think those types of topics are exactly the things that the listeners of the No Script Show would be talking about anyway around the braai fire.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing, minus the same stuff we drink and smoke. Great cigars, yeah. Thank you, and thank you, cigar supplier of mine, whose name I do not have the permission to release right now online. But thank you, cigar supplier of mine, and
Yeah, hopefully, but I think even podcasts specifically like the No Script Show, where the format is very much based on the format of a genuine just discussion, there are no rules, basically. I think those types of podcasts are going to do a lot of people a lot of good. It's not going to the No Script Show is not going to benefit thousands of people, even hundreds of people. But if a few dozen people, or even like 50 or 60 people, get a lot of benefit from it, then I think we've succeeded in a large extent, giving people that little bit of taste of conversation while they're sitting in their lockdown, and not to get the cabin fever blues.
I think so too, yeah.
Yeah, man, remember that time where we still used to shake hands?
Yeah, so let's get back on the whole Corona thing. Let's discuss the Sticks video on Corona. At least I don't know if enough people have watched it, but if we can skim over some points.
I wish Sticks can be it's not going to be a sponsor, but it's going to be a shout out for this episode. If you're not subscribed to Sticks Hexenhammer yet on Twitter, on YouTube,
I hope he's a guest on the show one day.
One day, man. That's how I got him as a guest on my show, man. I just made an innocuous tweet of, one day my channel will be big enough that I can have Sticks Hexenhammer as a guest. And then he replies, he's like, yeah, man, name the time. And I'm like, fuck. So yeah, dude, I had a pretty nice chat with him, I think 2 years ago. And he's just a real guy. He's just a regular, normal person with a very, very witty mind. I really enjoy his content. And I think most of the people that listen to the No Script Show follow me on social media, and if they follow me on social media, they would have seen how much I promote his content already. But if you are in the minority, or that one person that hasn't heard about Sticks, or Tal Warwick, his real name, definitely go check him out on YouTube, especially now during the lockdown and the coronavirus. He's doing daily updates and really doing some solid takes in regards to the daily news. So yeah, and he's a big supporter of alternative media. So I think he's falling right into our camp.
I agree, and I'm gonna do one more shout out to a couple of people.
Yeah, man, be my guest.
On the Twitter, seeing as they're tweeting us now. Shout out to our boy Don Barnard.
Yeah. You should come on the show, dude. You should contact him and check if he can do a lockdown episode.
We're looking at that. We're discussing that. Like, we're going to hope his people contact sort of our people. Yeah, shout out to our boy Don Barnard. Shout out to the Goose, Ron Kusin. And
you buried the hatchet there.
I mean, you negotiated that peace deal.
I was just making sure you guys are no longer at each other's throats. I mean, now you can have a conversation. You still hate each other's guts, but you're not on a level where you want to eliminate the other person.
The possibility of it was based in that long term sort of.
It was like we were at a social media point where it was the social media equivalent of the Cuban Missile Crisis. There was like a mutually assured destruction situation going on.
Exactly, it was like that heat. Like we were like, okay, I'm gonna take this guy now. I'm gonna fight him, and then we had an episode. I mean, look, and the funny thing about it is, and I'm going to go to a cultural point, was the sort of long-standing good relations, well, from time to time with the Botswana people and the Afrikaans people.
Yes.
Before
you lay down the facts, you just take a sip of whiskey, man.
Yeah.
So now let me tell you how it is. There are only two actions that can precede dropping some facts to you. Either a drag of a cigarette or a sip of a whiskey.
That's right.
So now let me tell you how it is.
Okay, I just did it there. Yeah, our peoples have had a stop. Oh, by the way, one of the things that pisses me off about the lockdown, if it extends far enough, is that it's going to screw over Seretse Hamade.
Oh, man.
Which is the 1st of July.
We probably would have had a braai at your place, man.
It's the 1st of July! It's literally the 1st of July, Seretse Hamade. Like, what Botswana doesn't know about Seretse Hamade?
Before you go there, people can take me to task on this. I don't think we're still going to be in lockdown during the 1st of July. I think by that time the disease will have peaked.
I'm doubtful. I think it might maybe extend 3 or 4 days, maybe a week longer.
Yeah, man. But
maybe
you were
into
saying
late April, but if you guys think it's going to go to
worst case scenario, it ends in May.
Yeah.
But you were saying, man, you were giving some context there.
Seretse Hamade. Okay, so
I'm just going to go to fill up my drink again, man, but you can... I know you've got a lot to say on this topic, so I can trust that you can keep the airwaves going.
Okay, this is how we do things professionally on No Script Show. Even though I only have a microbe of brandy and Coke left.
Yes, as soon as I'm back, I'll take over and you can get some drink yourself.
Okay, cool. You go yourself, man. Okay, so Seretse Hamade. So if you are a proud sort of Afrikaans person and you celebrate Bigotry Day, and if you're a proud American and you know celebrate 4th of July and President's Day, or as you should really call it, George Washington Day, you know that's the same thing to the Botswana nation. We have that pride and that love of the progenitor of our nation. The Botswana nation is one Seretse Hamade. He's a descendant. There's a very great statue in Gaborone, the Three Great Chiefs building, as it's translated in English to us, and it's basically Seretse Hamade's great grandfather and two of his sort of great sort of compatriots, and they sit there on this grand sort of statue. And as Conscious Caracal and I have sort of discussed for some time, there's this concept of what is a physical object, you know, and it is technically just a physical statue. But beyond that, it has a value which a nation of people have imbued into it. And so when Afrikaans people sort of have this value in Bigotry Day or whatever group of people, you know, you can
or any type of gathering during the 16th of December at the Voortrekker Monument.
Well, I mean, that's again that sort of actually is sort of a differentiation that I was just talking about. You know, the Three Great Chiefs Monument.
Oh, right.
How it's Seretse Hamade's day, and his great grandfather is one of the chiefs depicted in that statue. Technically, it's just a piece of metal, but yes. If you do not believe that there are not there's 6 million of, I'm going to say generously, there's 6 million Tswanas left on planet Earth. I think
that's a good estimation.
If you do not believe at least half of us place immense value in that building, in that piece of metal, you're deeply wrong. You're deeply wrong, like we do.
Yeah, man. And we've talked about this so many times where you can't really give a monetary value to sentiment. And what we have here is, for example, a medal as well. A medal is just a piece of ribbon and a piece of metal, but it has sentimental value.
If you do not believe that there are people willing to fight and die for statue X,
yeah,
I think you're misreading a situation.
No, of course, man. And well, just as I was pouring this drink of mine, I was thinking, you can go refill yourself there, man. I'll keep the conversation going.
Okay, your monologue time. I get time off. Okay, gang, I am taking my time off. Go.
All right. Oh no, he starts monologuing. Well, let me do my monologue. So, the thing about this whole lockdown thing is, I think, firstly, a big skill that you can learn is how to do basic rationing. I've learned this now with alcohol, and I'll definitely let Odin give his opinion here as well when he gets back. For me, the big thing is I don't have to. It doesn't have to take. In the first place, it shouldn't be a crisis that gets you to prepare for a crisis. You should be ready for a crisis because a crisis happens without your expectation. That's the whole thing about a crisis. And what we're seeing here is a lot of people being caught off guard with their pants down to start panic buying and really overloading the system. And it shouldn't take a crisis for you to do some basic things like buying, and you can hear in the background Odin breaking the ice because you have to have some cool pieces of ice in your drink to make sure that your drink isn't room temperature. But anyway, so you always need to be a little bit prepared. Now I can understand people that don't have the monetary means to be able to always prep, but you don't have to be prepped for a year. You just have to be prepped for at least a month, where you have enough canned goods in your home, enough water, enough basic things like, oh nice man, enough bandages, enough disinfectant, enough medical use alcohol to be able to handle a crisis. It shouldn't take a crisis for you to be prepared for a crisis. And I think that's the big wake-up call that a lot of people experience now, is that suddenly a crisis hits, and now they need to be prepared for a crisis, and now they panic, and they start panic buying, and they start just freaking out and getting panic attacks and start getting anxiety. But it didn't have to be this way. Me, I've always had this policy since for years now, where I have at least enough stock in my home to last me a month. In terms of if I really, and I'm not talking about to live in luxury for a month, I'm talking about basic stuff. I can get my daily amount of calories for lunch and dinner. I don't really eat breakfast, so that actually helps. But it's I do a
intermittent fasting, bro.
Yeah, man, it works. But yeah, that's my big thing. I always have enough canned food and like pasta and rice and mealie pop in my house, so that I know at any time, no matter what type of disaster hits, I will at the very least, be able to survive for a month. In terms of getting enough calories in during the day that I won't lose weight. Not going on the Maduro diet, if you will.
Yeah,
I said, these types of supplies aren't there so I can live in luxury for a month. It's literally so I can live. I know for a fact that I can survive for a month in terms of the basic essentials, and I won't be malnourished.
That extrapolates from. Look, I've got enough. I've got a little bit of a gut. I'm in my 30s now, so I just in my 30s. I got a little bit of a gut, so I can survive. But honestly, food wise, I can survive.
Have you seen the other guys your age, dude?
Yeah, I've seen the Oaks on the
I don't think you've got a lot to worry about, dude.
I've seen the guys on the East Pavilion of Loftus.
People younger than you, dude.
Oaks, you're like 25 and you've got guts that could shadow me. But that's anyway. No, but that's no excuse for me to slack.
Of course.
By the way, I've downloaded home workouts.
No, that's nice. That's actually a very productive way that a lot of people can pass the time during this lockdown. Now, I understand. Firstly, the first priority should be you're probably going to work from home. Get your work done. Don't be lazy. You're not on vacation. But at the same time, you're also going to, and this is just natural, this is not me saying you should slack off, but I know you're going to have more free time on your hands than during when you were working at your workplace. Because you're not driving, you're not sitting in traffic, you're not having to
even if it's just 15 minutes to workplace or 30 minutes to workplace.
So I'm not saying that I'm definitely not saying you're on holiday, but I can pretty much guarantee that you have more free time now on your hands. Even if you fill the entire work time that you are allocated to work from home, you most certainly have free time, seeing as you're not driving around. You're not doing little essentials. You're not doing like grocery shopping and like.
Sorry, I'm a computer scientist, and I'm a senior software engineer / computer scientist.
I'm a bit of a scientist myself,
and I have way more free time on my hands. Yes, sometimes. Well, not on my particular project right now, because I don't have anyone but myself. But sometimes on other projects, I have juniors that will mail me and be like, "Oh, can you help me with X, Y, and Z?" And I honestly do have sort of pity for them, as it were. Well, not pity, but I pity the fool. Yeah, can you imagine? I'm actually fully bored right now. Like, if you get onto the No Scoop Show Discord, I will send you a picture of my bald head.
Of your
that's not a reference to my penis. That's my actual bald head. But yeah, like, I know even between commuting and helping people with their software engineering problems, I have so much more time just because I don't have to drive. Like, I instantly, as soon as it's X hour, I just switch off my work laptop and I can do whatever I want.
And I'm just using my basic experience, and I'm only pretty much extending my personal experience to the population at large. For example, when you are working at your workplace, you take an hour lunch break. For me, is while I'm working from home, I'll be working on my computer and I'll just put something in the oven, I'll get something boiling, while working, now and then I'll just be working on my meal. I'll eat my meal and I'll pretty much I will not take, let me put it this way, I will not be busy for an hour to make my meal. I'll do that while I'm working. So already I've got an extra 40 minutes, 30 minutes to my day. When I'm driving to work, that's 30 minutes, 40 minutes in the morning, sometimes even an hour. When I'm driving back from work, that's another 30 minutes, 40 minutes. So at the end of the day, you're going to have between an hour and 2 hours, even an hour to 3 hours of extra time on your hands. And then how you use that time, that extra time that you're not in commute or not taking your lunch break or not standing around the water cooler, you can use that time to actually benefit yourself. Like, for example, like you and me doing workout from home, doing some basic fitness. You don't have to be ripped, just some basic fitness. And maybe read a book, man. You don't have an excuse now. You've got pretty much all the time in the world. So that book that's been lying on your shelf that you've always been procrastinating reading, you've got no excuse now, buddy.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And also, by the way, in terms of procrastinating and sort of time and all that, I forgive you if you take the first couple of days, as you probably have, to just hit up Pornhub and what the fuck ever you're doing. Like, I really do forgive you guys and gals. I got you.
Yeah, but maybe also a bit of a note or something that I haven't heard, or maybe it's a theme that hasn't been touched on this episode. If you are in the privileged position where you're not being laid off or not being paid during this time, and you are actually still earning a salary, I think you have a very strong responsibility to reward your employer during this time by working extra hard from home. Because you are in a very privileged position, and I'm not talking in the leftist sense, in the genuine privileged sense, where the majority of your mates, when their job closes now for the next month, they're not going to be earning a salary.
Absolutely.
They're just going to be told, tough luck, buddy, from their boss. So if you are in that position where you're still earning the same salary and you're not being laid off and you're earning a salary and you have the luxury of working from home and it's not affecting your job, then I think you have a very strong responsibility to actually work even harder to reward your employer in terms of giving you this privilege. I think it's really something that you need to keep in mind, that this is not a holiday. This is actually an opportunity to show your employer that you really appreciate the fact that you are in this very fortunate position. What do you think?
Yeah, I tend to agree. And look, for legal reasons, I cannot sort of name in a lot of specifics, but I know a lot of consultants, not just software engineering consultants, but consultants who have given hours away to particularly good clients that have been good to them over the months and whatever, for free. And I say, hooray, you've made that choice as an individual, as a libertarian. I say you've made that choice. Good. Hooray. Do that if you so wish to for your company. I can neither confirm nor deny if I've done the same and other people from my company have done the same, or if people I know have done the same. But, hooray, because they deserve that. Because some particular clients, no matter how big or small they are, I've seen, look, I'm a software engineer, and again, a lot of people rip me on the Ronaldo interviews, like, oh, I skip taxes, yeah. But I know a lot of software engineers who give a lot of their valuable time away to people who sort of pay out their time to people who deserve it. And as you said, it's a sort of charity. And also, by the way, if any of you in your...
What do you mean, you people?
You people in your neighborhood have drones or have excess of any sort of resource, I say, let us prove the libertarian principle and say, I have a drone, I have extra toilet paper, I have extra whatever.
You could have inserted a full stop there, like, let's prove the libertarian principle, I have a drone, full stop.
Yeah. I'm not saying I do or don't. I'm not saying how much resources or X and Y I have. Shout out to Don Barnard.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Shout out to my boy Don Barnard. Yeah.
Yeah, dude. But I think that's an important point where if you are in that, you have to put that into perspective. That a lot of people that you know and a lot of even of your peers are going to lose.
That's why I'm so pissed at the CCP. Like, all of you Western fucking liberals. Oh, Orange Man bad. Chinese virus bad. You love your maid Florence. By the way, her actual name is Mbule or some shit like that. You Western fucking I'm so woke liberals. Is Orange Man bad? Fuck him for having this
the
racist
Nick Bowers
name.
Of this world.
Nick Bauer ass niggas. How about the Chinese government that sat on this for a month, basically? And I'm not saying the Chinese people, I'm not saying the Chinese Americans, I'm not saying the Chinese South Africans, but and this goes back to our simp thing. Yeah, you fucking simps for the Chinese government, stop doing this. If you genuinely love Florence or Mavis or whoever the fuck your domestic worker is, stop simping for China, because you know what's going to happen with this shit? Either your domestic worker / maid is going to die, or going to get infected, or going to get hurt.
He's going to lose months of income at the best.
Months of income, and it's going to change our economic system for the worse for them. Right. You'll be fine. You've got a month or two worth of income saved up, or you've got your daddy's and sort of fucking trust fund or whatever. You'll be fine. They will not. Stop fucking simping for the CCP. I'm trying to restrain my anger because apparently I'm angry and whatever on
apparently
the
you're radical. But man, and that's where people like Mark Ruffalo coming in, it's like, oh no, Chinese virus is deeply racist. I'm like, dude, last time I checked, I'm old enough to remember when thinking all Asian people are Chinese was a racist concept, and that's what you're arguing here. It's like calling it the Chinese virus is racist against Asian people. Dude, Mark, if you think all Asian people are Chinese, then I've got a memo for you.
Yeah, all black people are Zulu, or all black people are Nigerian.
If you call the virus that originated next to
call me Nigerian. Call any proud Botswana Nigerian or Zulu. See what happens to you.
If there's a virus, if you call the Ebola virus, by the way, that originated
to the government of Botswana for their closing
this is not paid propaganda.
Shout out to my slight propaganda to the government of Botswana.
Wait, dude, maybe as a final topic before we end off this episode, can you give us some clarity on that death sentence that happened the other day?
You mean the one that was carried out in the Gaborone, and yes, the actual pronunciation is Gaborone.
Yes.
But we don't mind if you say Gaborone or Gabs, because we're not fucking super sensitive.
Yeah, man, just give some context there, because I've got a little bit of information, but, like, that's fascinating to me, is, like, that what happened there. Because you were tweeting about it as well.
Well, what do you know? What would you like to know specifically about that?
Well, maybe give the listeners some basic context background there on like why were these people given death sentence and why is the death sentence the thing in Botswana, and then we can take it from there.
Okay, so do you want to know like where the original sort of press release of it happened?
Well, yeah, that what you were tweeting about.
Okay, so the original press release of
because what I saw there was pretty much the Botswana government saying, "Yeah, we killed the guy." What you gonna do about it?
It's not the first couple. Well, actually, it was two guys. Mr. Mabitsela and his co-accused, Mr. Buchanan, 33-year-old and a 39-year-old.
And they were convicted of murder.
Yes. Okay, so quick thing. Although Botswana, southwest sort of country in southern Africa, still has the death penalty. When you get the death penalty in Botswana, it's basically sort of proven beyond a shadow of a doubt. It's sort of like it's like if you stab somebody on video, like this is clearly your face, where that's when you get the death penalty. Just to be clear, before people like, oh, the death penalty, blah blah blah. And I have my issues with the death penalty, but in Botswana, when you get the death penalty, it's beyond a shadow of a doubt. Like you're on video, or like you admit, like it's.
You're a terrible person, dog.
Basically. So the Botswana prison service, roughly about, I believe. Let me find where the tweet was. 28th of March. Shit. It's like not so far away.
Yeah. That's why it's relevant.
Yeah, so the thing about the Botswana government is that they've started to sort of embrace social media as a sort of thing to announce things. They basically hanged these guys. The reason they hanged them is that they do not believe in wasting bullets on convicted criminals because it's a resource.
They're not even worth the lead.
Basically, you're basically hanged because you can reuse the rope you're hanging somebody with. Shout out to our boy the Goose, Ron Curson, Goose. So the government put out this sort of press release. We hanged these two guys. In the
and they deserved it. Here's why.
Here's why, basically, blah, 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 blah. They later appealed the court justice, dismissed on the 8th of February. Assistant Commissioner Wamorne Ramolefe for the Commissioner of Prisons, blah, 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 blah. But it's basically just this really fucking long thing, and it's funny because there's a couple of liberals in Botswana who abolish the death penalty. By the way, okay, the BDP, Botswana Democratic Party, for reference, are basically the Republican Party of Botswana, despite their name.
That's interesting.
Yeah, they were started by Sretzegama, and recently headed by his son, and his son. is the only African leader who voluntarily let go of power and said, "Okay, fine, I'm done with this."
Setting an example.
Ian Khama said, "Okay, fine, here's the reins of power." And he said, "Okay, I'm going to go back to serving as a captain or major in the Botswana Defense Force. I was president, and now I'm going to go back to being like a fucking major and take a tiny fraction of my paycheck and just go back to living this life." And it's actually a meme in Botswana. Like occasionally he shows it's his sort of guilty pleasure. Like you'll be sitting in a bar on Friday and he'll just randomly show up like in your bar and he'll be like, "Sup?" And he'll drink with you or whatever. And well, he's a teetotaler, but he'll drink Coke with you and take pictures with you. That's a meme in Botswana. And so back to the Botswana. So these guys, beyond a shadow of a doubt, okay, cool. We have these guys. We know that they did it. Right. We're gonna hang them. Here's the human rights thing. They're like, "Oh, you can't kill these people." So, as a libertarian, I'm kind of like, yeah, but also, why should my money or my earned taxes go to supporting the person who we know beyond a shadow of a doubt murdered or raped?
I mean, you've made this point on Twitter where you said, put yourself in in the shoes of the person whose sister was raped. And
I say this, and my actual thing is, as somebody who's had family members who have been both murdered and raped, I've started to think, why should
some people are unredeemable?
Yeah, like some niggas just got to go, as they said in that Louis Theroux documentary. I'm like,
you made that tweet as well.
Some niggas got to do. I'm like, why should my tax money go to keeping you alive if I know beyond a shadow of a doubt you murder or rape somebody I love dearly?
And that's kind of where you diverge from like libertarian dogma. Is like where you support that type of action. I do agree.
That's why I say nobody's a pure libertarian.
Right. And and that's why one of the questions I think was during the political compass test is like some criminals cannot be rehabilitated. And I strongly agree. I think some people are just fucking evil, man. That's how I view the world. I believe humans are inherently evil, but we have immense potential to be good. But some people are just plain and simple evil, and they don't deserve to exist.
Yeah, and some things tend to rhyme, like the destiny of the Tswana people and the Afrikaans, as you and myself know, for personal reasons.
Yeah, man. I think that's I think I got to run. It's like 8 o'clock. As a symptom of the lockdown, I'm doing some video and Skype calls with my parents and my brother, and also with my girlfriend. So now at 8 o'clock, I'm gonna do a Skype call with my family. So I think this is where I give my final thoughts. But then Odin as well, I'm open for any type of conversation during the lockdown. Like I said, after I've done my work during the day, I'm definitely up for conversation, even if it's just chatting some cock.
My last couple of minutes, I would say we're up for that on the No Script show, and I've spoken to people like my boy Duma. We're relying on you. And we're gonna do this, and and
also getting your man Don Barnard on, mutual friend.
Let's get
you
the man.
You can call him friend of the show.
let's get the man on. Like,
so maybe talk about that's something. Well,
guns.
That is actually something very interesting.
Don Barnard, come on the fucking show, bro. We are challenging you to come on the show, Don.
Something that is interesting during this time that I think you can actually really dig into when you talk to Don. Maybe, if you're going to talk to Don, let me know, and I'll be on that episode as well. I want to really pick his brain in terms of the role that crypto is playing in this time, and the hits that we've seen crypto take during this time, and how he can explain it. I think that's really a nice meat conversation to get into.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's a good thing to listen to.
Yeah, dude. But yeah, my final thoughts, people, wash your hands. I hope after this pandemic you retain a lot of your good hygiene habits. And then also the most important thing...
Donald Trump didn't engineer this plague.
And then also, just localism, I think, is the anecdote to this globalist caused problem. I hope after this pandemic we can have a hard and stern debate about globalization, because I think that's one of the big issues that we need to discuss now. And then finally, and my final thought on this episode is fuck the Chinese Communist Party.
Fuck the CCP. Shout out to you, my boy CC. Shout out to your boy
CC without the P.
Yeah. And shout out to everybody who isn't simping the CCP. And shout out to everyone who's repping, localism. Shout out to the few clear. Shout out to Andres Pretorius. Shout out to Sretsahama. Shout out to everybody who wants to represent their culture and their language and all that good shit. You deserve to rep that. I'm gonna rep my clan and my people.
And you've got full right to do that.
All you Afrikaners, shout out to you too. And let's do this shit, guys. Good night and have a good week. We'll be probably dropping another episode soon. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys. Have a good one, eh?